Let's get some analysis. Joining me from The Australian is the foreign editor, Greg Sheridan. Greg, our first chat for this year. What a week it's been since the inauguration. So much delivered already by Donald Trump in terms of his promises, including the confirmation, as we heard there from Annalise at the weekend, of the new Defence Secretary.
Yeah, Kieran, great to be with you and great to have you back. The nation was rudderless in your absence. Look, Hegseth, I think, is a very problematic appointment, but he might surprise us all on the upside. I wasn't so distressed that he once had a drinking problem and that he's been married lots of times and so on. I don't think that goes to his capabilities, but he's a very junior officer and he's had no management experience, and neither the Democrats nor the Republicans in his confirmation hearings asked him about any policy matters, like how many submarines is the American industrial base going to build, or how they're going to overcome their shortage of fighter aircraft or anything. But he will prosecute the culture wars stuff for the Trump administration, and some of that is quite relevant. I mean, the loss of the warrior ethos in their recruitment, I think, is one reason why their recruitment is so far down. You know, you join the military because you're willing to exercise lethal force in the defence of your country if you have to. You can't recruit on the basis that you're going to have a sort of a good social work experience. So it remains to be seen how he goes. The other limitation I don't like about him is that, like all recent defence secretaries, he's an army officer, whereas really the US is facing a maritime challenge above all else with China, and they need a different priority of thinking.
There's been quite a contrast between Trump, the 47th president, as opposed to the 45th. He's so much better prepared. This is rolling out so methodically, as opposed to the first time when many of his inner circle, including probably himself, were surprised he won.
Yeah, you're dead right, Kieran. This is unlike any other second term we've ever seen. Mostly a second term, a president is starting to lose a little bit of energy, and the administration knows it's going to be a lame duck quite soon, and you get less done typically in your second term than your first term, almost universally in American political history. This is totally different. So Trump knows infinitely better how government works. He has a whole movement around him, whereas he had no one around him in 2016. He's got this cabinet appointed very, very fast, and it includes some very, very good people. You know, Rubio as Secretary of State, the Bessent, who's going to be Secretary of Treasury. These are mainstream, very important, good Republicans. And the cultural change is going to be enormous. So he's going to abolish diversity, equity and inclusion as a criterion in government behaviour and try to do the same in private sector behaviour. Well, even if he loses in 4 years' time, it's hard to imagine that DEI ever comes back in quite the way it existed before. He's already acted on the border. He's had a little dust up with Colombia to force them to take back their citizens whom he's deporting. This is the most energised second term I've ever seen, and indeed it's unusually energised even for a first term because he already knows who all of his appointments are going to be. So this is Trump like we've never seen him before, and he'll still say and do some strange things, of course, but there's much more purpose to what he's doing now, and he may effect a revolution in the United States.
I want to get your reflections on this solemn moment that's been marked in Poland, the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, and your reflections on that, the international show of support for the Jewish community, including from our government, a senior delegation, but in the context of a concerning rise around the world in anti-Semitism and an appalling parallel to that right here.
Yes, Kieran, this is a very solemn business. I mean, Auschwitz is a shattering experience. My wife and I spent a day there a couple of years ago, and it's almost unbelievable. It's a much bigger scale, but it's on a level of barbarity which is only equalled by the Hamas atrocities on October the 7th. And I think the Albanese government has been just hopeless in all this, hopeless. They have a doctrine now that everything they've said and done on the Middle East has no effect on anti-Semitism in Australia. What we've got is a worldwide crisis of anti-Semitism coming from three different sources. You've got the old right-wing racist anti-Semitism associated with Nazis and neo-Nazis. You've got the left-wing ideological anti-Semitism associated with a hatred of Israel, and you've got the distinctive Arab and Islamist anti-Semitism. This is the oldest and most evil hatred in the world. We've been in a global crisis of anti-Semitism for some years. That's why when it got going in Australia, those of, the folks in Australia who had any sense of history at all were warning the Albanese government, you've got to get right on top of this straight away because this is a terrible global crisis. And the Albanese government was reacting to it like it was a dispute in Marrickville Council or something like that. So they're not remotely anti-Semitic themselves, obviously, the Albanese government, but they have not done anything really effective to counter this. They're not doing anything about the sources of this anti-Semitic hatred, especially on our universities, and their own, I think, absurd demonising of Israel, voting for very one-sided resolutions at the United Nations, which demonise Israel and which therefore validate part of the narrative of anti-Semitism, have given us the worst anti-Semitism in the history of the Australian nation. We've been blessed as a nation to be largely free of anti-Semitism. Today we're in the grip of an anti-Semitism crisis, and I think the Albanese government is scrambling at best to respond.
Greg Sheridan, I appreciate your time. I look forward to many chats throughout this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran.